Hello, this is Statler Smith. You are watching one installment of a weekly series where I write an essay about something that's on my mind, record myself speaking that essay, and then upload that video to YouTube. For reasons set forth in the initial video in this series, this is a practice for myself. As such, this video will likely not be entertaining or particularly educational. Perhaps one day I will have value to add to others, but in the words of Aragorn, King of Gondor, it is not this day. If you choose to keep watching, feel free to give feedback on the clarity of thought and speech, as that is what I am trying to improve. Please let me know if you have undergone a similar journey or have tips to share. And who knows, maybe I will eventually add more video editing. With that, let's get into this week's essay.
Hello, I am in a different place this week. We're visiting some of my wife's friends, and I am in a local library, recording my essay. It's been good though. Libraries are awesome places, or awesome resources. Use them. Um, so I was planning to write about AI this week, and I have most of an essay ready for that. But then Charlie Kirk was shot this week about 10 minutes away from the house I grew up in. That event is rather disorienting for me in a number of ways. First, my home, my place of safety, is now less safe, or it seems less safe at least. Second, Charlie Kirk had a rather violent and sudden end, which for me has uneasy implications to say the least. I'll talk through both of these in my essay and share some thoughts I have about the future. Overall, this event has contributed to eroding my trust in society, particularly in the U.S. And without as much trust, of course, I feel insecure in the society that I'm a part of, or at least more insecure, right? To the degree that my trust in the society has been eroded. Now, looking back, I am very fond of where I grew up. For those who don't know where Charlie Kirk was, he was attending an event at Utah Valley University. I grew up in Orem, where Utah Valley University is located. Now, Orem has its quirks. People sarcastically or seriously dub it part of Happy Valley, Utah, and it's a hot spot for members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Some people refer to us as Mormons, although we prefer the prior name. Having such a concentration of religious membership in one geographical area results in a few cultural idiosyncrasies that many find odd. I know many in that environment who feel suffocated and constricted by the culture. I believe that some of my family members do. I'll probably need to check in with them as well just to make sure. But either way, I've never felt suffocated in the same way. I tend to be someone who thinks deeply about things, including religion. So I think the worst that I've felt is held back in a sense. Not everybody thinks about, or not everybody thinks deeply about what they believe in. Even in a culture with such a saturation of religious people, I sometimes felt frustrated that others hadn't proceeded as far down the religious philosophy route, so to speak, as I had at times. Now, this belief is, of course, probably a rather arrogant way to consider my own thoughts, but by growing up in that area, I did feel like my moral growth was swift and supported. When I look back, I remember intensely wanting to do good, to be a good person, to help others, to brighten others' day as much as I could. I may not always have been the best at doing so, but I wanted to. It might have been better than I am now, frankly, at carrying out that intention. And I felt like that was supported in the culture that I grew up in, wanting to help others, wanting to make others' days better, right? Um, so for me, I think of, well, I have fond memories of growing up in Orem. I felt safe. I felt supported in my quest to be a better person. Um, I felt proud of how Orem and Utah has shaped me into the person that I've become. And so to hear that the shooting was so close to my home and this place that I have fond memories of dented my illusion of safety there. My thoughts of Utah for the past few days have been tainted with a sense of darkness, and that saddens me. And I know that not everybody had that experience growing up in Utah, and perhaps my perception of the past growing up in Utah is colored in a different way. That might be worth an essay in itself. Um, Putting all that aside for a second, this feeling of uncertainty was also exacerbated by a podcast that I listened to this week. Podcast in question was On the Diary of a CEO. Fantastic podcast. Thank you, Stephen Bartlett, for the great work you're doing. The guests were a few post CIA agents, the Bustamantes, and they were talking about their book Shadow Cell. The podcast was rather entertaining, great storytellers, but it ended with a few questions for the guests about how they feel regarding the state of the U.S. government. And from their answers, they aren't super optimistic. Their conclusions were that the U.S. has been choosing a strong executive for the past 16 years, and as a result, the executive branch has only gotten stronger with each election. Of course, that undermines the balance of power between the three branches of government. Essentially, the U.S. citizens have chosen to have a leader to make decisions for them instead of expressing a desire to be accountable for themselves. Of course, this is in contrast to the founding fathers, who were very much representatives of the people. Now, this decision over time leads to difficult social and economic times, and the Bustamantes aren't new to difficult social and economic times. One of them grew up in Venezuela in the 80s, which was apparently before a lot of social upheaval. And disclaimer, I haven't done extensive research on Venezuela in the 80s, but apparently, from what she said, her family was wealthy in 1980, and everything was lost by 1989. The lesson they took from that, and that I took from that as well, is that circumstances can change rapidly and dramatically. The podcast ended, or at least contributed for me, to a general sense of uncertainty about the future. I had just heard about an event happening close to my home that I thought was safe. Turns out it's no longer safe as I thought. And then I hear these experts saying that things can change quickly. So all of that congregated for me into a sense of uncertainty about the future, and then you combine that with what's going on in the world, and I've been feeling like maybe I should rethink some decisions or long-term plans that I had. In a nutshell, those have been my thoughts about what I thought was a safe place, and that is no longer safe, or at least no longer as safe as it was before. It doesn't feel as safe as it was before. The second line of thought is more on the actual event, which has much more far-reaching political and social implications than how I feel about my own. And that the second line of thought is much more, of course, about Charlie Kirk. I don't have much experience with Charlie Kirk, or frankly, a whole lot of familiarity with what he's promoted. The only times I heard about him before this event, this past Wednesday, were times where he was a podcast guest, or he was featured in a few YouTube shorts or Instagram reels. From those, I knew he had built the organization Turning Point USA. I knew he was politically conservative, religious, and from what I could tell on the podcasts, he seemed sincere. Frankly, more combative or confrontational than I would be, he seemed much better at inserting what he was going to say in the middle of somebody else's sentences, which I'm not great at. But he seemed sincere. And either him or his organization resonated particularly with young men, which I think is a needed connection these days. And from what I saw, he seemed to be a better role model than Andrew Tate, right? At least he's religious. He has values that aren't just all about him. Anyways, again, from what I saw, he seemed to be a better role model than Andrew Tate. So when I heard about the shooting, I was sad. I felt like he was a net positive in America, so him dying felt like a net negative for me. But like I mentioned, I haven't done a whole lot of research into what him or Turning Point stood for, and so one thing I'm going to try this time is I am going to visit Turning Point USA, the website that I assume they have for the first time, and record my thoughts as we go through. So I will see you in a second. All right. I think this is working. So, like I mentioned, let's talk through Turning Point USA. Point USA. Okay, I'm assuming this is the main site, Turning Point USA. All right, okay. So of course he's at the head. I'm not currently interested. Is there a way that I can X out of this? Is there an X in the top right corner? I would not like to register. Okay, maybe now I can X out of this. What if I just... Alright, what if I scroll down far enough? Okay, so, looking here, right now it looks like they have made most of the website about, of course, the event, which makes sense. I mean, with this, let's see. Charlie Kirk poured his life into building a movement rooted in faith, freedom, and love of country. He believed America's future depended on raising up a generation who would never surrender. Never surrender. I think I have hesitations about that. I do like the concept of having beliefs and sticking with them. So I think I support that part of it. Never surrender. I think in general, just the fight, so to speak. I'm not a huge fan of rhetoric that places, us versus them. So I think with that with that caveat, I do like having beliefs and sticking with them. I don't like the rhetoric pushing us against each other. All right, that vision is alive and stronger than ever. Prayers are rising, support is pouring in. Millions of students are rallying, volunteers are flooding in, and vigils are filling churches and schools across the nation. The fire Charlie lit is burning brighter than ever. Now the responsibility is ours. Honor his legacy by pressing forward, not slowing down, not surrendering. Not a time to preserve. It's time to fight harder, grow faster, and unleash the true power of the grassroots machine Charlie created. We'll make Charlie proud, defend America's future. We'll not stop until freedom prevails. A couple things. This sentence is not a time to preserve what was built. I feel like, from what I understand, and I might be totally wrong on this, but conservative ideology is a lot more about preserving the good that we already have, whereas liberals are like focusing more on the new things that can make our future better. So this feels counter to that. Maybe they're talking about something different like this specifically. This, we will not stop until freedom prevails. I mean, of course, with every political ideology, like you need to have a stopping point, or else every organization that has ever been built, the primary purpose of the organization is to continue, to sustain its own need. And I think there is value in saying, okay, we will stop at a certain point, right? Or else we will never stop and will far outlive our usefulness. So of course, like I support, I think it's great that we are dedicated, that we're working hard or whatnot. Just as with every organization, there should be a tripwire. Okay, so I think that, but again, that's mostly the head page or the initial page, and that makes a lot of sense because Charlie just died, and it's all about honoring his legacy. So here we have believe activists are stronger than they work together. Oh, that's good, unity and whatnot. I do like that sense of promoting a sense of community, not like, well, I don't know who would say just go back to your Discord and be great. So they have student schools, college students, take away what a person owns, you control what a person can do. Okay, so that's like much more on ownership rights. I believe in legal ownership rights. I believe in legal ownership rights. We can get into like whether or not we actually own things, right? But that's kind of a more religious discussion for me. It might not be for everybody, but I think from a legal perspective, having ownership rights is good. Okay, so here we go. Alex Clark. I'm not familiar with Alex Clark. Culture Apothecary. So that's health and wellness. Oh, that's cool. Of course, there's the Prove Me Wrong debates. I feel like that was what Charlie was mostly known for, was his debating prowess. There's TPUSA originals. I imagine this is a lot more. Well, I haven't seen them. Turning Point Tonight. Also, I'm not aware of that. News. Okay, so what kind of news are you showing? DHX rejects claims of indiscriminate stops in Los Angeles ICE operations. Of course, I've heard of those. From a Okay, let's see. I mean, of course, this is seems to be more conservative. Not sure what some of the messages are. I mean, I imagine this article is probably this is happening and it's bad, right? And this is happening and it's good. Granted, okay, let's see. So what is it? What do they report about? Political current events, politically related current events, education. What is this? Culture and society? No idea. State stuff, culture trends from the top. So it seems like there's a. I mean, of course, I imagine these are mostly going to be conservative news articles. Well, they seem to be from a variety of subjects, at least, so that's cool. Of course, there's your shop, exclusive content, join the movement. Okay, let's go to About Us. That seems more helpful. Identifying, educating, training, and organizing students to promote freedom. Okay, so that seems like that's mainly what they are for. So promote. Okay, but focus on students. Promoting freedom, focused on students. I don't really see anything initially bad about that. Let's look at what promoting freedom means for them. Nonprofit, promote fiscal response. Okay, so this is what they look like. This is how they see promoting freedom: fiscal responsibility, free markets, and limited government. Personally, I guess principles of fiscal responsibility in my personal life, that has led to a lot of freedom. But I feel like Dave Ramsey is more the personal fiscal responsibility guy. So I'm not sure if what they have here is as good or as put together. Free markets. I stand free markets. I do. I think government has a role in keeping the markets free, right? There tends to be a coalescing of power or of monopolies and whatnot. So I think the government has a part in making sure that the market remains free. And limited government. I appreciate that as far as not encroaching on people's lives. What we strive to do: educate. Okay, so that's identify, empower, activist, organize, mobilize. Okay, so again, so there's just kind of the steps: governance, programs, national field. Let's see. Great outlet to get involved in your campus. Is that a Trump? I don't know. Okay, so let's go back up here. What we do: guide students to develop knowledge, skills, values, motivation, and meaningfully engage in their communities and restore traditional American values. Okay, so traditional American values, that's kind of the conservative part that I was talking about before. Patriotism, respect for life, liberty, family, and fiscal responsibility. I mean, a lot of times patriotism can turn into me and people who believe like me. So I think, of course, there's a human nature element there that might not be fantastic, but all of these values, patriotism. I don't really know. Maybe I should define patriotism in one of my essays and talk about it. Respect for life. Of course, I assume that means no abortions. But I mean, from a generous reading, I imagine it also means, just don't kill people in general, right? Liberty, family. I think this particular one, I think I appreciate. And again, going back to fiscal responsibility. Let's see. I wonder if they have. Um, yeah, I don't know about this one. Uh, oh, that's a claim. Capitalism is the most moral and proven economic system ever discovered. Discovered? I'd say more created. I don't know. I don't know if personally, my personal beliefs. I don't think economic systems can be moral. I think they are moral. Or no, I think the systems are amoral, and then people are moral within those systems, or they are immoral within those systems. I don't think that the system itself leads to more moral or less moral. I do think capitalism provides a greater degree of freedom as to what you want to do, right? Because, um, well, yeah, I can talk about capitalism in another essay. I think I'll stop here by saying that I don't know if an, any economic system can be classified as moral or immoral, frankly. I think it's the systems are the systems, and then it's the people within those systems that are moral or immoral, and use those systems either to be moral or to be immoral. Um, so I think that this is probably the first thing I disagree with the most. But again, that's not to say that I think capitalism is immoral. It's just I think it's amoral. Our mission. Okay. One thing I'm interested in. Do they have resources? They talked about fiscal responsibility. I want to know what they mean when they say fiscal responsibility. Media movements. Students, events. News, yeah, there's just that. So they don't. I wonder, what if I just say, what does Turning Point USA advocate in terms of fiscal responsibility? What if I go to AI mode? What will that tell me? So mostly limited government. That government overreach is detrimental to a sound economy. And then, of course, you need to reduce government spending. Okay, so this is much more like free markets, lower taxes. Not really. Yeah, okay, concern over national debt. Support to that. Okay, so in fiscal responsibility, it seems like from what the Google AI is telling us. Ooh, what? Anyways, AI, different topic. That it's mostly about like top down as far as limiting the spending from the top, promoting free markets, lower taxes, etc. Not much about personal fiscal responsibility, which like it's a political organization, so I guess that makes sense. Anything else from down here? Nope, not really saying much. Okay, so it looks like again, promoting freedom seems to be their big thing. I mean, from this overview, it doesn't seem malicious. I disagree with a few things. I haven't, again, I haven't watched the debate, so I don't know what specific points he takes. So while I mean, for sure, right wing. I mean, you can see the flag flying in the background. But yeah, I don't see anything intentionally malicious. a few things I disagree with. I think I'm repeating myself now. Do I have any valuable insights from the website? I don't think so. It doesn't seem hateful. Um, Promoting freedom. I think. Okay, here's my critique. Maybe it's more of a critique of the approach in general, not this specific website. Having the ability to be free, right, to take actions that you want, doesn't matter if you don't take the actions that will make you more free, right? I think freedom is primarily an individual responsibility and then a government responsibility. Because if we limit ourselves, it doesn't matter. If we limit ourselves to a smaller array of actions than the government does, it doesn't matter what the government, if the government gives us more freedoms than we actually implement, than we take advantage of, it doesn't matter. Um, so I think before we talk about whether or not the government is providing us enough freedoms, the first step for each of us is to inspect how we live our lives and see if we are living in a way that expands our own freedom. What I mean by that, are we spending less than we earn? Are we taking care of our body? Are we taking care of our relationships? Neglecting to do any of those is far more constricting than, at least in the US, anything I feel like the US government is requiring of us. Um, so those are my initial thoughts. But that's my general approach to take things individually and then look at the bigger picture. So do with it what you will. But yeah, looking at the website seems legit. All right, so looking at the website, I still believe that Charlie. Um, I still think it's a net negative that he's no longer with us. Um, and now with everything, I've spent some time trying to figure out the causes, behind why did they want to remove him, some of the implications and the fallout for what's been done. I think at this point they've caught the shooter, but I don't know if that really helps me figure out the the cause behind why he did what he did. Of course, the obvious approach is to take the evidence at face value with the engravings on the bullets and the video evidence and whatnot of the shooter. I also wouldn't be surprised if this somehow turned out to be a targeted attack, primed and planned by one of the political parties in power. Either one. I don't trust that I don't trust that the Republicans or Democrats wouldn't authorize something like this. And the fact that I don't think I can trust either is scaring me. So let's take the first scenario, right? The evidence seems to be pointing to the shooter as a radicalized young man. Moving forward with that conclusion, he most likely believed he was doing the nation a favor, helping us avoid fascism. Assuming that was his perspective, we have become much more divided and hateful than I see in my day-to-day life, much more violent than I believed. Now, I've heard about this hypothesis called the young male sedation hypothesis from the podcast Modern Wisdom. Now, the hypothesis starts with historical data, where societies with an oversaturation of sexless and jobless young men have a lot more destruction, where the young men kind of feel disillusioned and don't have a direction or whatnot, so they destroy things. Now, we are currently in a society with sexless and jobless young men. Now, why aren't we seeing that same level of destruction? The theory is that porn and video games are sedating young men so that they don't participate in that sort of behavior, right? They don't destroy things. Given that hypothesis and this recent event, I wonder if our honeymoon period, or where that sedation is wearing off, right? Will the disenfranchised and disgruntled young men start fighting against a society that they see at odds with themselves? Will they start destroying things? Will they start um, will they start making the society a lot less safe? I hope not. But either way, violence only breeds more violence, and crossing the bridge from verbally sparring to physically assaulting each other is not a bridge that I want to cross, not a place that I want to live. The second scenario, where this is a targeted and planned attack from an organizational perspective, is also scary, right? Much more Illuminati conspiracy theory type way, but maybe less unpredictably scary. I don't have much of a theory here, more like a notion that somebody with political power believed it to be advantageous to have Charlie offed in a public setting. That could benefit both parties, either from removing a rival or creating a martyr. Um, the only thing I don't think it helps is any sort of unity or collaboration between the two sides. And for me, that's the saddest conclusion from this whole affair. Regardless of the cause, regardless of whether the shooter was acting on their own or as part of an organized hit, the ultimate outcome, I believe, is more division and an increased sense of hostility between the two parties. Right, the left, of course, is going to be a mix of people who are celebrating the fact that Charlie Kirk has been unalived, and then on the right, they'll use this, of course, to demonize the left and be more problematic. I mean, it is disappointing how predictable news is. Um, but this will lead to an increased sense of hostility between the two parties, between members of my community, and between members of my family. And I'm not excited for that. Um, maybe this is just one one more example of a society that's already going that way. Um, but either way, I don't like that direction, and I hope we can turn it around. So that's my essay today. Next week will be a lot more about AI than today was. But thanks for tuning in, and have a great week.